My name is Diane. 15 years ago, I was 28, unmarried, and already branded a disappointment by the people I loved most. My two brothers, Mark and David, were chasing their own dreams, shaky and flawed, but theirs. Meanwhile, I stayed. I was the one who sat in sterile hospital rooms holding my father's hand as cancer stole pieces of him day by day. I was the one who wiped his tears when the pain was too much, the one who kept the last embers of hope alive when everything else seemed lost. I believed that love would be enough. I thought caring for him, standing by him, would mean something in the end. I was wrong. The day my father died was a blur of black clothes and whispered condolences. People told me I was strong, that I had done the right thing. But the moment the last guest left, the real battle began, not in the courtroom, but at my own kitchen table. My mother sat across from me, eyes cold and unreadable. She pushed a thick manila folder toward me and said, "Just sign these, honey. Legal paperwork. It's complicated, but it needs to be done." Grief had dulled my instincts. I trusted her. I signed, one line after another. What I didn't realize was that with each signature, I was signing away my birthright. Days later, Mark called, drunk and triumphant. Mom gave us everything, he slurred. The shop, the house, even Dad's watch collection. Said you didn't need it, probably marry some rich guy anyway. The words hit like a freight train. I drove to the house, my childhood home, now theirs, and found my mother packing away my father's things with practiced efficiency. I asked how she could do this, how she could erase me. She didn't flinch. I did what was best, she said. Your brothers have families to support. You're young, educated, pretty enough. You'll be fine. I looked into her eyes and saw something I'd never seen before: cold calculation. In that moment, I had a choice. I could scream, fight, drag this through endless courts, tear my family apart for all to see. Or I could walk away with what dignity I had left. I chose dignity. The next months were the hardest of my life. I moved into a tiny studio apartment, smaller than my childhood bedroom. The walls were thin, neighbors loud, and the radiator groaned like it was dying each night. But it was mine. No one could take that away. I found work as a receptionist at a law firm, $9 an hour, answering phones, filing papers. I listened intently to conversations about wills, trusts, inheritance disputes. I soaked in every word as if studying for the most important exam of my life, because I was. By night, I took community college classes in legal studies. By weekends, I volunteered at legal aid clinics, helping women betrayed by their own families. I saw myself in each story: mothers cut out by vindictive exes, daughters erased by brothers who believed they deserved more. I wasn't just building a career, I was building a life they couldn't take away. Year after year, class after class, case after case, I crafted a new legacy from the ashes of betrayal. Eventually, I opened my own consultancy, Diane Foster Legal Services, focusing on family inheritance disputes, women's rights, and estate planning. There is an irony in this universe that can't be ignored. The daughter they thought would amount to nothing became the person families turned to when their own foundations cracked. I helped Sarah, whose stepchildren tried to steal her home after her husband died. I helped Maria, whose brothers convinced their elderly father to sign over his restaurant while medicated. I helped dozens of women find voices in courtrooms that expected silence. Each victory felt like more than justice, it was personal. It was healing. It was for the girl who signed away her future at this very table. Betrayal isn't just about what was lost. It's about the silence that follows, the questions unanswered, the trust shattered. For years, I believed that my family's rejection was a verdict on my worth. But through those hard years, I learned that true worth isn't assigned by others, it's claimed through action, resilience, and refusing to stay buried. The legal system isn't perfect. It can be manipulated by those with power and influence. But knowledge is a weapon, and I armed myself with every tool I could find. I realized that many women suffer in silence, erased by laws and customs that favor entitlement over equity. That became my purpose: to give those women a voice, To turn pain into power. For years, I lived in a kind of dual reality. By day, the quiet receptionist answering phones and filing papers. By night, a student buried in legal textbooks, devouring cases and statutes as if my life depended on it. Because it did. The apartment was small, cramped, just one room, with a sagging mattress, a tiny kitchenette, and windows that rattled when the wind blew hard. But it was a sanctuary. It was where I began to rewrite my story. At the law firm, I listened to conversations I never expected to understand. Lawyers debating trusts and estates, discussing loopholes and precedents. I soaked it all in, sometimes asking questions when no one was looking. I volunteered at legal aid clinics on weekends, working with women whose stories were heartbreakingly familiar stories of betrayal, silencing, and exclusion. I remember one client, Maria, a woman in her 60s, whose elderly father had been manipulated by her brothers into signing away ownership of a family restaurant. She was desperate, feeling powerless as her siblings erased her years of sacrifice and care. Watching her struggle stirred something in me, a reminder of my own battle, the invisible wounds left by those closest to us. I helped Maria file a challenge to the deed, uncovering evidence of undue influence and lack of mental clarity at the time of signing. It was slow, grueling work, but in court, watching justice inch its way toward her felt like reclaiming a piece of my own stolen legacy. Stories like Maria's were everywhere. Women sidelined, dismissed, erased, not because of their capability or love, but because of old biases, power plays, and ignorance of the law. I began to understand that family dynamics often complicate legal battles far beyond the paperwork. There are emotions, grudges, unspoken rules, traditions that favor sons over daughters, men over women, the entitled over the deserving. In many ways, I was not just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every woman told she's less than worthy, for every daughter told she doesn't belong at the table. During this time, my relationship with my mother remained a ghost in my life. We hadn't spoken since the day I walked out of that house. But in the quiet moments, I wrestled with memories, the woman who taught me to read, who dried my tears, who baked cookies on rainy afternoons. I held on to those fragments of love even as betrayal threatened to consume them. Family isn't always the safe place we imagine. Sometimes it can be the hardest prison to escape. The legal system, with all its rules and cold procedures, is often the battlefield where these personal wars play out. Understanding estate law isn't just about protecting assets, it's about preserving dignity, identity, and justice within the intimate framework of family. I learned that silence and ignorance are allies to betrayal. Knowledge is the first line of defense. I continued my education one class at a time, juggling work and study exhaustion and hope. I still remember late nights poring over contracts, legal cases, and inheritance laws fueled by cheap coffee and stubborn determination. Eventually, I earned my certificate in legal studies and then went further, gaining credentials to represent clients and advocate in court. Each small success was a step away from the girl who signed away her future, a step toward the woman who would claim it back. Opening my own consultancy was both a practical move and a symbolic one. Diane Foster Legal Services was my declaration that I existed, that my voice mattered, and that I would fight for those whose voices were silenced. Sarah came to me when she was 35, overwhelmed and heartbroken. Her husband had passed, suddenly leaving a house and savings behind. But her stepchildren, convinced they deserved everything, pressured her to give up her rights. They whispered lies, questioned her motives, and tried to isolate her from legal advice. Sarah was a teacher unfamiliar with the complex legal maze of wills and trusts. She feared losing her home, the place where she raised her children. I walked her through every step, from gathering documentation to filing formal challenges. I coached her on how to present her case calmly and confidently, even when the stepchildren's lawyers tried to intimidate her. Months later, the court ruled in her favor, recognizing her rightful claim. The relief in her eyes was unforgettable. For Sarah, it wasn't just about property, it was about being seen and respected. Too often, women find themselves at a disadvantage in inheritance disputes. The law may appear neutral, but societal biases seep in assumptions about women's roles, their financial acumen, and their place in family hierarchies. My work revealed a painful truth. Many women are unaware of their rights or lack access to resources that can protect them. That's why education and legal support matter as much as the law itself. It's about empowerment. Just when I believed my past was behind me, my phone rang one chilly spring morning. It was my mother. Her voice was fragile, almost unrecognizable. There was no trace of the coldness I remembered, only desperation and regret. "I need to see you," she whispered. My finger hovered over the end call button for what felt like an eternity. I wasn't sure if I wanted to reopen old wounds, but something in her broken voice stayed my hand. 2 days later, I drove back to the house where I grew up. The place looked abandoned, paint peeling garden overgrown and foreclosure notices taped to the door. Inside, my mother looked like a shadow of her former self, frail, shaken, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch my face. "You look beautiful," she said, voice cracking, "successful, strong." "What do you want, Mom?" I asked, wary. She invited me in, serving tea in the same kitchen where years before I had signed away my future. But the room felt different, smaller, heavier with regret. She confessed the truth without preamble. Mark's construction business had failed. David's gambling debts piled up. Mortgages and loans drained everything Dad had left. The bank was foreclosing. And she called me because she needed help, the kind only someone with my knowledge could provide. I was wrong, she admitted, voice breaking. "Your brothers weren't strong enough to carry this family? You were. And I was too proud and stupid to see it." The words I'd longed to hear hung between us like smoke from a dying fire. I could have turned away. I could have let her face the consequences alone. But I saw something beyond the betrayal, a woman who had once loved me, flawed and broken, asking for forgiveness. "Okay," I said, "but we do this my way. No more secrets, no more lies, no more treating me like I'm naive." She nodded so hard it seemed her neck might snap. The next 3 months were relentless. I restructured debts, negotiated with creditors, and found legal strategies that saved what seemed lost. But more than that, I rebuilt a fragile connection. We talked about Dad, about fears, about the sexist attitudes that shaped her choices. She admitted she thought pushing me toward marriage instead of business was protecting me. I told her the world wasn't kind to me either way. But I grew stronger. Together, we worked with trusted lawyers to rewrite the will, this time with ironclad language, witnesses, and clear intent. My brothers received token amounts, enough to show love, not enough to waste. Everything else came to me. "This is your father's legacy," she said, "and it should have been yours from the beginning." 3 weeks later, she passed peacefully. The will reading brought Mark and David out of silence. They arrived with arrogance, calculators in hand, ready to divide what they assumed was theirs. But their confusion was palpable when the lawyer revealed their mother's instructions. Diane was to handle the proceedings. Their disbelief turned to panic as I read the will aloud. To my sons, $50,000 each. To my daughter, everything else, and an apology. Mark's calculator fell to the floor. David sputtered challenges, citing sickness and mental incompetence. I smiled quietly, prepared for this fight. I had anticipated every legal obstacle. Every document was vetted, every signature notarized. Their attempts to contest were futile. I established a trust, converting the family shop into the Foster Family Legal Resource Center. It offers free consultations, workshops, and support groups for women facing family legal battles. Dad's watch hangs in a place of honor next to a photo of him and Mom on their wedding day. Every day, women walk through those doors carrying the pain I once bore. Some are angry, some broken, some afraid. But they all leave stronger, armed with knowledge, hope, and support. Yesterday, a young teacher named Jessica came in tears, streaming. Her stepfather had convinced her dying mother to leave everything to his children. "I don't know anything about legal stuff," she sobbed. "I'm just a teacher. I don't know how to fight." I handed her a tissue and said, 15 years ago, I was a receptionist who knew nothing about law, but I learned, and I'll teach you everything you need." In that moment, I felt Dad's presence, Mom's forgiveness, the cosmic rightness of seeds planted in pain finally blooming. They buried me thinking I was gone. but I was just a seed learning how to bloom. If you've ever been underestimated by those who should love you most, if you've ever been told you're not strong enough, smart enough, or worthy, if you've had to choose between bitterness and growth, revenge and justice, staying buried and blooming, know this: your story isn't over. It's waiting for you to write the ending you deserve. The story I've shared isn't unique in its core. Many people face betrayal by those they love, and the pain that follows can feel insurmountable. But what separates those who survive from those who crumble is often the choice we make in the aftermath. I chose to grow, to learn to fight not just for myself, but for others silenced by the same harsh realities. Family betrayal is complicated because it intertwines emotional history with financial and legal disputes. It's not just a matter of money or property, it's a violation of trust and identity. When someone you love, your parent, sibling, or spouse, cuts you out of their life or their legacy, it sends a message that you don't matter. The ripple effects aren't only legal, they're psychological and often lifelong. I want to take a moment here to talk about something that isn't discussed enough: the emotional labor of betrayal. For years, I carried the weight of what was done to me, the quiet humiliation of being dismissed as not enough, the lonely nights wondering if I had done something wrong, if I was unworthy. But healing began when I stopped blaming myself and started reclaiming my power. When I entered the world of estate law and inheritance disputes, I quickly realized the system isn't designed with fairness in mind. There are implicit biases against women, especially daughters, in many family inheritance cases. Historically, sons were expected to carry on family legacies and inherit property, while daughters were encouraged to marry and be taken care of by their husbands. These outdated attitudes still influence decisions today, often to the detriment of women who have contributed equally, if not more, to their families. In my practice, I saw women who were denied access to financial resources because they lacked knowledge or legal representation. I saw families torn apart by greed disguised as tradition. The law can be a sword or a shield, it all depends on who wields it. That's why I dedicated myself not just to mastering the law, but to teaching others how to use it to protect themselves. Starting a consultancy was daunting. I had no big connections, no inherited client base, but I had determination and a deep understanding of the emotional stakes involved. I focused on building trust, listening carefully to my clients, many of whom were scared, angry, or ashamed. I tailored solutions that addressed not just legal concerns, but also emotional well being. Often simply knowing their rights empowered clients to stand firm. My business grew slowly but steadily, fueled by word of mouth and my genuine commitment. Looking back, those humble beginnings were the foundation for something much bigger than I imagined. Linda, a woman in her 40s, came to me after her father's sudden death. Her brothers tried to pressure her into signing away her inheritance, a small family farm that had been in their family for generations. Linda was a nurse dedicated to caring for others, but unfamiliar with legal battles. Her brothers argued she was careless and irresponsible, implying she was unfit to inherit. What struck me most was Linda's quiet strength. She wasn't loud or confrontational, but she knew what was right. Together, we gathered evidence of her contributions to the farm and challenged the will's validity. The court ruled in her favor, affirming her rightful share. Linda's victory wasn't just about land, it was about respect. One of the most important lessons I learned is that legal disputes aren't just about documents, they're about narratives. Every case is a story with characters, motives, and emotions. Winning in court often means crafting a compelling narrative that humanizes your client. In my own story, I was both the plaintiff and the advocate. I understood the pain of betrayal intimately, and I used that to guide others. After years of silence, when my mother called, it was clear she was no longer the woman who had dismissed me. Her call was a fragile olive branch. Working with her to fix the family's financial mess was as much about healing old wounds as about restructuring debts. We talked late into the night, sharing memories and regrets. She confessed that societal pressures had influenced her decisions, the belief that sons were safer inheritors. She admitted her mistakes openly. That honesty was painful but necessary. It reminded me that behind every betrayal, there are complex human factors: Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what happened. It's about releasing the burden of anger that keeps us trapped. I didn't forgive my mother overnight. It took time, reflection, and seeing her vulnerability. Forgiving her didn't erase the past, but it freed me to move forward. Transforming the family shop into a legal resource center was a symbolic act, turning a place of pain into a beacon of hope. The center offers free consultations, educational workshops, and legal aid to women facing family disputes. It's staffed by volunteer lawyers and advocates who share the vision of empowerment through knowledge. Every day I see women arrive burdened with fear, confusion, and grief, and every day I watch them leave stronger, more informed, and ready to claim their rights. I firmly believe that advocacy is about more than legal representation. It's about amplifying voices too often silenced by social or economic barriers. It's about creating a community where women can support each other. When we understand the laws and know our rights, we dismantle the power structures that perpetuate inequality. That's why I speak at community events, write articles, and mentor young women interested in law. The fight for justice doesn't end in the courtroom, it starts there. If you've ever been told you're not enough, not smart enough, strong enough, or worthy, I want you to hear this. Your story matters. Your voice matters. You have the power to change your narrative. It may feel impossible now. You may feel isolated, but resilience is built one step at a time. Find allies, seek knowledge, trust yourself. The journey from betrayal to empowerment isn't linear. It's messy, painful, and often lonely, but it's also transformative. I'm living proof that what feels like an ending can be the beginning of something stronger. The legacy I reclaimed wasn't just property or money. It was my identity, my dignity, my voice. And that legacy is something no one can take away. One of the hardest truths I learned along the way is that healing doesn't erase the scars, it teaches us how to live with them. My scars weren't just physical or financial, they were emotional wounds inflicted by those who should have been my greatest protectors. But these scars also became my compass, guiding me toward a purpose greater than revenge or regret. Education changed everything for me. Not just formal legal education, but the daily lessons learned from clients, mentors, and even adversaries. Understanding the law gave me a voice where silence once reigned. It gave me tools to dismantle injustice one case at a time, and it reminded me how many others lacked access to this power. I made it my mission to bridge that gap. Legal literacy isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Emily was a single mother who lost her inheritance due to a vague and poorly written will. Her step-siblings exploited the ambiguity to claim most assets. Emily felt helpless, overwhelmed by legal jargon and the financial burden of hiring an attorney. Through my center, she accessed free consultations and support. We helped her gather evidence, challenge the will, and assert her rightful claim. Emily's victory wasn't just about money, it was about securing her children's future and restoring her sense of justice. Her story echoes countless others. Inheritance disputes are emotionally charged because they force families to confront their fractures publicly. Grief, greed, jealousy, and old wounds resurface with brutal clarity. For many, it's the final chapter in a long history of unresolved pain. Navigating this terrain requires more than legal expertise, it requires empathy. That's why I make emotional support part of the process. Healing begins when clients feel heard and understood, not just represented. A family legacy isn't just property or money. It's values, memories, love, and respect passed from one generation to the next. My family's legacy was fractured by greed and misunderstanding, but I chose to redefine it. By transforming the family shop into a center that empowers women, I created a legacy of resilience and justice. That's the legacy I want to leave, one that uplifts rather than divides. Resilience isn't about never breaking. It's about learning to bend without snapping. Every setback I faced, the betrayal, financial struggles, emotional isolation was a test of my resilience. Each time I chose to rise, learn, and move forward. Resilience gave me the strength to build a life on my own terms. Legal battles like mine aren't isolated events. They're part of a larger movement toward social justice. Women asserting their rights challenge long-standing inequalities. Each legal victory sets precedents that ripple through communities. My work contributes to this broader change one case at a time. One of the most rewarding aspects of my journey has been building a community of support. Through the Resource Center, I've connected with women from all walks of life. We share stories, advice, and strength. Together, we break the silence that often surrounds family betrayals. Community is healing. Community is power. Looking back, I see how adversity shaped me. It forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about family trust and self worth. It pushed me to acquire skills I never imagined I'd need. It taught me compassion for others in pain. Adversity wasn't a roadblock, it was a catalyst. Forgiveness is a process, not a destination. It requires patience, self reflection, and sometimes professional help. I encourage those I work with to explore forgiveness not for others, but for themselves. Forgiveness frees us from the chains of bitterness. It opens space for growth and peace. Rachel came to the center after being disinherited by her father in favor of a distant cousin. She was devastated, feeling invisible and betrayed. Her case was complex, involving questionable legal documents and family secrets. Through months of legal work and counseling, Rachel reclaimed her rightful inheritance. More importantly, she found her voice and self worth. Her story inspires me daily. Advocacy extends beyond legal battles. It involves education, policy change, and public awareness. I participate in workshops and speak at events to highlight the challenges women face in inheritance disputes. By raising awareness, we can push for reforms that protect vulnerable family members. Advocacy is a lifelong commitment. Justice isn't only about winning cases, it's about balancing fairness with compassion. I strive to understand the motivations and fears behind family conflicts. Sometimes solutions involve mediation and reconciliation. Other times they require firm legal action. Each case is unique. My journey is far from over. Each day brings new challenges and opportunities. I remain committed to empowering women, advocating for fairness, and transforming pain into purpose. My legacy is one of hope that no one will suffer in silence as I once did. If you find yourself facing betrayal, injustice, or exclusion, know that you are not alone. Your story matters. Your voice matters. There is strength in seeking help and knowledge. The path may be difficult, but it is navigable. Choose resilience. Choose growth. Choose to write your own legacy. When I look back on the journey from that kitchen table where I first signed away my future to the courtroom where I reclaimed my legacy, I see a path paved not just with legal battles, but with hard-won self-discovery. Each step was a lesson in resilience, in trusting myself when others doubted me, and transforming silence into a voice loud enough to be heard. Many people don't realize how much strength it takes to stay silent in the face of betrayal. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's a shield, a way to gather strength and avoid futile conflict. For years, I chose silence. I mourned quietly. I rebuilt quietly. And when the time was right, I spoke with conviction, knowledge, and purpose. One of the most common themes I see in inheritance disputes is a lack of understanding about legal rights. Families often operate under assumptions that the eldest son inherits, that daughters shouldn't question decisions, that what's fair is whatever the majority wants. But fairness isn't always obvious or agreed upon. Knowing your rights is the first step to protecting yourself. That's why I dedicate so much energy to education, to make sure women and vulnerable family members know they have options. Hannah was a young woman whose father had left a will favoring her half siblings from a previous marriage. She felt invisible, like an outsider in her own family. Her siblings pressured her to accept a small settlement, but Hannah wanted justice. Through legal counsel and emotional support at the Resource Center, she challenged the will. We uncovered evidence of undue influence and coerced signing. Hannah's victory was more than financial, it was a stand for her identity and place in her family. Winning a legal battle doesn't always heal emotional wounds. Family estrangement, hurt feelings, and mistrust often linger. I encourage my clients to seek therapy or counseling to process these feelings. Legal victories are important, but emotional healing is essential. Without it, the cycle of pain can continue. Sometimes families can find common ground through mediation. Mediation provides a space for open communication guided by a neutral third party. While not all cases are suitable for mediation, it can preserve relationships and reduce conflict costs. In my practice, I assess each situation individually, balancing legal strategies with opportunities for reconciliation when possible. Rebuilding trust is challenging but not impossible. For me, rebuilding a relationship with my mother involved honesty, boundaries, and gradual forgiveness. It required recognizing her flaws and my own needs. For many, rebuilding trust means redefining what family means on new terms. Since opening the Foster Family Legal Resource Center, I've been humbled by the community's response. We've expanded services to include financial literacy workshops, legal clinics, and support groups. Our goal is to create a holistic approach addressing legal, financial, and emotional needs. We partner with social workers, therapists, and financial advisors to support clients comprehensively. Beyond individual cases, systemic change is critical. I've joined coalitions advocating for laws that protect vulnerable family members, improve transparency in estate planning, and ensure fair treatment regardless of gender or birth order. Policy reform is slow but essential for lasting impact. Cultural beliefs heavily influence inheritance practices. In some cultures, sons are traditionally favored and daughters encouraged to marry out. These norms complicate legal disputes, especially when laws conflict with cultural expectations. Navigating these complexities requires cultural sensitivity and legal expertise. My work often involves educating families on balancing tradition with fairness. Legal battles, especially those involving family, can take years. Patience is as important as knowledge. Persistence, the willingness to keep fighting even when progress is slow, is critical. I've witnessed clients grow stronger through this process, finding unexpected reserves of courage. Sharing stories breaks isolation. When women share their experiences of betrayal and justice, it creates connection and hope. The Resource Center hosts storytelling circles where clients can safely express themselves. These gatherings foster empathy and resilience. While progress has been made, challenges remain. Each case is unique and can bring unexpected obstacles. I prepare clients for this reality, equipping them with legal tools and emotional support. Knowledge empowers preparation. If you're facing betrayal or exclusion, here are some steps. Seek legal advice early. Don't wait until decisions are finalized. Gather documentation, wills, trusts, financial records. Reach out to support networks, friends, counselors, advocacy groups. Prioritize your emotional well being. Healing is a process. Remember, you're not alone. Others have walked this path. My journey from betrayal to empowerment continues. Every client I help reminds me why I started. Every success story fuels my commitment, and every challenge strengthens my resolve. Legacy isn't inherited, it's created. I choose a legacy of empowerment, justice, and compassion. A legacy where women's voices are heard and respected, where families heal rather than fracture, where knowledge is power and power is shared. The kitchen table where I once signed away my future is now a symbol of transformation. From that place of loss grew a mission to uplift others. My story isn't just mine, it's the story of many who face betrayal and choose to rise. Your story can be one of growth, resilience, and justice, too. As I sit here now, reflecting on the journey from that kitchen table to where I am today, I realize something important. The wounds we carry, the betrayals we endure, do not define us unless we allow them to. They can either be the anchors that hold us down or the catalysts that propel us forward. For me, they became the fuel for transformation. Each of us has a story marked by trials and triumphs, by moments of pain and moments of unexpected grace. Your story is uniquely yours with the power to inspire and change not just your life, but the lives of those around you. Embrace your narrative. Write your own ending. It took me years to learn that vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage. Sharing our pain, our fears, and our hopes connects us deeply to ourselves and to others. In those connections, healing begins. The path to justice and healing is rarely straight. There are setbacks, detours, and moments of doubt. But every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. Celebrate those steps. We cannot control what others do or say, but we can control how we respond. Choosing dignity over bitterness. Choosing growth over stagnation. Choosing justice over silence. Legacy is more than inheritance. It's the impact we leave on the world through our actions, values, and courage. I hope my story encourages you to build a legacy of hope and empowerment. one that honors your truth and uplifts others. If there is one message I want to leave you with, it's this. No matter how deeply you've been hurt, no matter how insurmountable the challenge seems, you have within you the strength to rise, to reclaim what was taken, to write the ending you deserve. Your story is not over. It is waiting for you to begin again. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you find strength in your silence, courage in your truth, and power in your voice.